Food is arguably the best thing about being alive. No other bodily pleasure is enjoyed multiple times every day and never gets old. It's an expression of culture, our parents' love, and a means of celebration or comfort. That's why it hits a special nerve when we're told we should change what and how we eat to fight rapid climate change. One of the most delicious foods, meat, gets the worst press. It doesn't help that the topic is really hard to properly research yourself.
This video is just gonna make me feel bad about eating meat, isn't it? Isn't it?
And that debates get emotional quickly. But clearly, science can give us an answer. The reality is, well, it's complicated. Let's take a look at 3 climate arguments against meat that are used a lot and see what happens.
How do you say his chat? How do you say his channel? I got nothing.
1. Does our diet really play that bigger role in climate change? Feeding billions of people is impossible without causing emissions. Even if someday we have zero-carbon tractors, refrigerators and cookers running on renewable energy, and electric trucks to move our food, there are still unavoidable emissions. Rice emits methane. We cut down forests to make room for pastures and crops.
Isn't it like cow farms produce like a shitload of the methane gases or whatever?
And we emit nitrous oxide.
Yeah, it's something about cows be
fertilizers and manure. Worldwide food production is responsible for about 26% of all human-made greenhouse gas emissions, which is unfortunate since food is not optional. While 26% doesn't sound that bad, it means that even if we extinguished all other sources of emissions today, the emissions from food alone would still use up our entire carbon budget by 2100.
Dear
So
God,
no
that's
matter
scary.
how we twist and turn it, food is a real driver of climate change.
Now it's working.
Still, emissions from different food items vary a lot.
Cow
How
fart.
do things look when we compare their footprints separately? Food's climate impact is most often based on life cycle assessments, an analysis that looks at all the emissions of a product throughout its existence,
God damn it.
from production to transportation, packaging, use, and waste management.
Don't
In the most detailed
start.
meta-analysis of life cycle assessments to date, beef emissions
Don't
stand out at the top.
Start.
On average, a kilogram of beef emits 71 kilograms
I'm not gonna fucking play the video. I'm not gonna play the video.
of CO2 equivalents. Lamb is also high at 40 kilograms. Pork emits 12 and kilograms.
Oh my God! Why is it so loud now?
Emit around 150 times less than beef. The most important aspect of food isn't weight though, it's nutrient density. A kilogram of beef would keep you
We're
alive
back to
much
Twitch,
longer
chat.
than a kilogram of potatoes. So how does the ranking change if we compare emissions per calorie or protein? Not much. Animal protein is still the most costly for the environment, and beef and lamb are also outliers in emissions per calorie. But is this fair? After all, not all beef is the same. There are
only
all
use the
sorts
good
of
meat.
ways to rear cattle, from pure grass-fed.
You know what sucks, chat? Since I live in the middle of nowhere, I only get shitty vegetables. Like, did God just fart? Dear Lord, that is loud. I get shitty vegetables that are old, meats that are like just not good. Like the salmon they have at Walmart. Oh my God. I only have Walmart. I went to out of town to a Deerberg. Oh my fucking God, have I been missing out. It's literally like walking into a theme park of fresh vegetables. Like a bunch of different cheeses, like fresh sushi. Like they have like a whole fucking slab of salmon that you just like, hey, can you just chop me off a pound? And just like they give you a slab.
To factory farming. The worst beef comes in at 105 kilograms of emissions per 100 grams of protein, the best at only 9.
I love it.
A tenfold difference. In contrast, most other foods, especially plant-based, have a much
I'm not gonna be able to finish this video now. I gave you guys too much power. I gave you guys too much power. This is a mistake. It's a fucking mistake. All right. Anyway. Moving on. Global warming. We're all going to die in like 100 years.
Is worse than the worst plant. Okay, but this seems probably. Can we buy the right beef?
God damn it!
And lower our emissions? Maybe by buying locally produced beef to minimize our footprint? 2. Does buying local food actually matter? Let's stick with beef, since it's such an outlier. By buying locally, you are trying to avoid emissions from transportation and packaging. But it turns out these only account for 0.5 to 2% of beef's total emissions.
Farts and burp!
Actually, transport and packaging combined are only about 11% of all food emissions. Nearly all food
Need to get rid of capitalism?
are produced
Any
over the last few
agreeers?
miles, the regional travel on the road supplying the markets and shops in your area. International food transport happens mostly on freight ships, which are insanely efficient. For example, shipping 1 kilogram of avocados from South America to Europe generates about 0.3 kilograms of CO2 equivalents in transport emissions and around 2.5 kilograms overall. While 1 kilogram of beef from your local butcher will come in at 18 kilograms in CO2 equivalents at least. So even when shipped great distances, emissions from almost all plant-based foods cause lower emissions than locally produced animal products. Okay, so if transport doesn't play a big role, what causes the vast amounts of emissions
More
from
anti-corporationism than anti-capitalism? Well, corporationism is a product of capitalism, you know? Like corporations having a chokehold on pretty much everything that goes on, that's capitalism.
Then, by far the largest share of beef emissions consists of methane released directly by the animals.
Yep.
While
Cow fart.
CO2 hangs around for centuries, methane only stays in the atmosphere for decades. But in these short periods, it is very powerful. All in all, methane has already caused 23 to 40% of human-made warming so far. There's controversy about how bad this is exactly, and we don't want to dive in too deep.
Let me get it. Let me get a money shot. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that fucking cheesecake. Are you guys not jealous? I meant to do that.
Deep here, but the way things stand, any kinds of extra emissions are not great. Still, all cows burp and fart to similar degrees. What explains the spectrum of beef emissions? There are a couple of things. It makes a difference if the beef comes from a dairy herd or one dedicated to beef production.
Damn, that's good!
44% of the world's beef comes from dairy cows, sharing its footprint with dairy products. Dairy cows tend to get higher quality feed, which makes them grow faster and emit less methane. Geography also plays a role because it determines which farming methods are possible. The worst factor by far is the destruction of forests for farmland.
Now would be a good time to fart.
Not only does this release the CO2 that was bound in the flora, it sets free carbon that was stored in the soil and destroys its ability to store it in the future. This aspect accounts for much of the range of emissions in beef. The worst emitters are farms burning down rainforest for farmland, especially in Brazil.
True.
There is a sinister truth hidden here. The more animals suffer, the better they are in terms of climate change because they are way more efficient. They use less land and their food is brought right to them, and so they grow faster and don't expend energy on things like walking. Cattle in a factory farm.
They're basically saying animal cruelty is good for the environment. We fucking live in a society, chap. We fucking live in a society.
That never get to roam pastures can sometimes be less destructive for the climate than cattle grazing peacefully on a formerly lush piece of rainforest. But isn't it a bit out of touch with reality to demonize cows so much? Some of the land these animals are grazing on isn't suitable for crops anyway. By grazing on pastures, they can turn things we can't digest into food.
So my cousins, I don't really have
way
any
to make
cousins.
The best use of
I have
unused
only like
resources. 3. Don't cows mainly use land that we can't use for agriculture or other things? About half of the world's ice and desert-free land is used.
I'm searching. Yeah, I can't find who asked.
For agriculture, an area the size of the entire Americas plus China. Half of all agriculturally used land is dedicated to animals. Most of it is grassland, 65% of which cannot be converted to cropland. So pasturing animals is actually a very efficient way to use those areas,
I'm just
since
kidding,
we
by the
can't
way,
grow
you're
human
fine.
food there anyway. There are a couple of catches here though. While the idea of cows turning useless grass into steak is nice, it is part of a marketing lie. Even though it is so massive, pastureland alone can't support the ruminants living on it. Globally, grazing systems sustain only 13% of beef production. So if we were to switch to 100% grass-fed, we'd simply have to eat much less beef. In the US, beef
Pepe
production would
hands.
crash by some 70% if
Dude, I genuinely think it's going to be nearly impossible to get especially Americans to stop eating beef. There's no fucking way, dude. There's no way. To be fair, I don't really eat red meat much, mostly because my tummy, but I don't eat red meat much. I mostly eat chicken and salmon. It's not, I mean, yeah, it tastes too good. And also, I've tried to eat just like vegetarian stuff. I always am hungry. Every time I eat like even if it's a full-on vegetarian meal, I eat the whole thing and I eat as much as possible. I still feel like I'm missing something. You know what I mean? There's probably a way around it. I just don't know what. But it's like if I don't eat meat in a meal, it feels like I'm just not full. You can't expect an extreme mass of people to cooperate in unison. I mean, we can't even get people to mass cooperate to stop school shootings. Something that is endangering our children. How the hell are we gonna how the hell are we gonna fix this? We can't even stop school shootings, dude. Or I guess school shootings in general. Not really just school shootings, but we can't even stop that.
if it were to exclusively rely on grass. The only way to sustain our high demand for meat is by growing crops and feeding them to our
Or
cattle.
wearing a mask.
And we haven't even talked about chicken and pigs, which exclusively eat
Yeah, fucking COVID.
Eat your vegetables!
Literally, all meat production just ceased. We could change the world with this meme.
Even if you find the most environmentally friendly beef in the world, your burger
eating
still
grass
comes with a
from now on.
significantly higher carbon footprint than a veggie patty. You can decide for yourself what you want to do with this information.
Eating ass from now on? Hell yeah.
Now it's time to walk away. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Did you laugh or cry or maybe subscribed? I'll thank you either way. You know I will miss you. I hope you return. Tell your friend or your mother to get me more views, please.